Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into a genuinely dark piece of history hidden deep in the isolated, freezing depths of Siberia. It all starts in a totally forgotten place called Kezhnet, where a gruesome discovery out on the railroad tracks triggered a massive, sprawling cover-up. What we're about to look at is exactly how corruption takes root, but more importantly, how the relentless, unstoppable pursuit of truth can actually break through it.
Okay, let's dive into this setting. Picture this place, Kazynet. It was this deeply isolated, lonely settlement completely swallowed up by dense Siberian forest. It had a population of exactly 24 people. That's it, mostly just the families of railway workers. It barely even registered on maps. By 9 p.m., this heavy, oppressive silence would fall over the single railway line that cut through the trees. It was absolutely not the kind of place you'd want to wander around alone at night.
Now, fast forward to August 14th, 1989. What those brothers found out there in the dark were the fragmented, horrific remains of a group of people. The victims were 7 teenage boys from a nearby community. Every single one of them was just 15 years old. They were this close-knit group of friends who were literally just out collecting cedar cones for the weekend. They had planned to catch the 10:40 p.m. train back home. They never made it. Now, what's really interesting about this case is the sheer audacity of the local police. Their initial conclusion? They ruled it a tragic accident. They actually claimed these 7 boys all just fell asleep on the tracks together. But the red flags were glaring right from the start. I mean, toxicology reports confirmed 0 alcohol in any of their systems. The train drivers insisted that the boys never even flinched or tried to move when the train approached. And most bizarrely of all 7 of their backpacks were found 250 meters away, perfectly, meticulously lined up. Despite the literally impossible physics of this so-called accident, the local police just shut down the investigation. Case closed. The boys were quietly buried. But the families? They knew for sure that something deeply sinister had happened to their kids. The problem was, whenever they pushed for answers, the local police would just ignore them, or they would conveniently lose crucial pieces of evidence. These grieving parents were slamming into an insurmountable wall of local, small-town corruption. But here's the thing. These parents' resolve was unbreakable. For 2 agonizing years, right in the middle of the chaotic fall of the Soviet Union, they fought the system tooth and nail. Finally, in 1991, they actually managed to get a letter directly into the hands of Russian President Boris Yeltsin. And against all odds, it worked. The prosecutor general in Moscow officially forced the case back open and dispatched elite investigators to find out what really happened. Leading this new charge was Vladimir Gusenkov. This guy was known for untangling the absolute worst, most complex, and highly corrupt cases. But when he arrived in Kezhnet, he hit a total wall. All the physical evidence had been destroyed by the weather, and the villagers were suddenly struck with amnesia. Nobody knew anything. But then Vladimir caught a whisper, just a rumor about a local guy named Vasily who was currently in prison for killing his own brother. It was a massive long shot, but it was a lead. So Vladimir sits down and interrogates Vasily. Surprisingly, Vasily eventually offers up a confession, but it was incredibly flawed. He claimed that just he and his brother had murdered the 7 athletic teenage boys on their own. Now, Vladimir knew there was no way 2 scrawny guys could overpower 7 fit teenagers without a massive fight. He needed undeniable physical evidence to break this wide open. So he had to make the grim, heartbreaking decision to order a midnight exhumation of the boys' bodies. What would a fresh look actually reveal? So the crucial point is that this new autopsy completely and utterly shattered the accident theory. The bodies revealed horrific, brutal injuries that clearly happened before they were ever struck by a train. We're talking massive fractured skulls, broken jaws, and deep stomach wounds. Forensic experts even brought in dummies to test strike patterns, and they proved beyond a doubt that the wounds perfectly matched heavy, specialized tools taken from the local railway depot. This wasn't an accident. This was a calculated massacre. Armed with this new forensic reality, Vladimir brought the train drivers back in to talk. With their memories jogged, they recalled a chilling detail. The bodies were placed perfectly in a horizontal line right across the tracks. They were literally positioned to be crushed. There was a total absence of any defensive flinching because they were already dead or unconscious. Vladimir's new theory was horrifying but clear. The boys were slaughtered near the station, and then their bodies were methodically posed to manufacture this fake accident.
Vladimir takes this straight back to Vasily and just presses him relentlessly. He breaks right through Vasily's lies, and suddenly this terrifyingly large web of culprits starts spilling out. Vasily names a couple of deceased accomplices, a local railway lineman, and then the absolute shocker, Nikolai. Nikolai wasn't just some local villager. He was a senior police lieutenant who was just in town visiting relatives. A high-ranking officer of the law was actively involved in the slaughter of 7 children.
And this brilliantly illustrates how quickly a senseless tragedy can unfold. Vladimir aggressively interrogated the railway lineman, who finally snapped and confessed. He laid out the whole terrifying escalation. These men, including Officer Nikolai, had been drinking heavily. They ran out of booze, went looking for weed at the train station, and bumped into the boys waiting for their train. Out of sheer drunken boredom, the men falsely accused the teenagers of messing with the train signals, just to pick a fight. What started as a stupid argument rapidly escalated into an absolute nightmare. The turning point in the fight was horrifying. Nikolai, the guy literally sworn to protect the public, got knocked down in the scuffle. Enraged, he pulled his service weapon and brutally struck one of the boys with the butt of the gun. The moment the boys realized they were being attacked by an armed cop, they froze in terror. And that's when Nikolai gave the chilling order: kill them all and erase every shred of evidence.
Directed by Nikolai's insider law enforcement expertise, the killers meticulously went to work staging the scene. Because they knew the local freight schedules, they took the battered bodies and posed them directly across the tracks. To make it look like the boys had just settled down to rest, they carried their heavy backpacks 250 meters down the line and lined them up perfectly. Once the scene was set, the murderers simply vanished into the night long before the 1:40 a.m. freight train thundered through.
From there, the pursuit of justice turned into this agonizing decade-long roller coaster. In 1995, it looked like a victory. The killers were actually handed the death penalty. But then, geopolitics literally intervened. In 1996, Russia was preparing to join the Council of Europe, which meant they had to abolish the death penalty. Through a bunch of crazy procedural loopholes, the Supreme Court completely overturned the convictions. Just like that, these killers were released straight back into society without even having a retrial. As you can imagine, the consequences of letting them out were immediate and brutal. With the killers walking free, witnesses were actively silenced. Vasily immediately tracked down and attacked a cousin who could have testified against him. His own brother, Yuri, was mysteriously found suffocated. And, horrifyingly, a completely different railway lineman, a guy who had actually helped the authorities find evidence back in 1989, was found dismembered on the exact same Kezhnet train tracks. The violence was just continuing in plain sight. But despite the very real danger, the families never gave up. They forced a second reopening of the case in 1999. And get this, during the time he was free, that murderous police officer, Nikolai, had actually become a municipal political leader. It wasn't until 2003 that they were finally found guilty again. But the sentences? Shockingly lenient. Nikolai and the lineman received just 10 years, and Vasily got 7. And to the very bitter end, Nikolai sat there and played the victim, claiming he was framed. The whole Kezhnet incident is just a terrifying testament to how easily corrupt systems can be completely manipulated by the very people meant to uphold the law. Yet, amidst all of that darkness, the victims' families stood like an absolute rock. For 14 long years, they flat out refused to be silenced, and they forced the world to see the truth. But it leaves us with a pretty chilling question. What does it really take to find justice when the very people tasked with protecting you are the exact ones orchestrating the cover-up? Thank you for joining me for this explainer.